previous video, we showed how to get a proper exposure with the A7S using the Cine 1 gamma curve, but that was primarily for a light-skinned subject. And the recommendation there was to set the zebras at 70%, and then once you see them, back off maybe a half a stop or a stop. Now, if you're trying to get a proper exposure for an outdoor scene, though, with no subject in it, and basically the scene is your subject, you have to be very careful not to clip your highlights or let your highlights go over 109% IRE. So what I can show you, let me show you a couple clips here. And two of them are overexposed and properly exposed, and then one of them is properly exposed. And for this particular setup, we actually had set the zebras to 100%, but in retrospect, we probably should have set it to 95%. So if I'm looking at this first clip here, if we're looking at the waveform monitor here, you can see where it was no doubt up here in the highlights that we got this clipping. But here's the thing. So if you look at the color curve here, if I try to bring those highlights down, notice they don't come down really. See how they're just kind of locked up there? And even if I pull it all the way down, you can still see that. So it's so interesting because once you go over 109%, basically the curve throws all that, anything over 109% into the highlight clipping bin, and you cannot pull those down. But the same's not true for the shadows. The dark areas, you can bring those up and adjust that, but not the highlights. So what this means is that you've got to be 100% sure that you do not clip at above 109% unless you don't mind that blown out look. And so I don't know who, maybe you can live with that for your particular film. Now let's go to the second clip here. And this one, you can actually see we didn't go over 109%. And if we come over to our curve adjustment, see, wait, I gotta click there. I think I can bring those highlights down. See? So there, we as long as we didn't clip at 109, but you can see we really were cutting it close. And that's why I say to set the zebras at 95%, because you do not want to go over 109%. And again, with the shadows, we can bring the shadows, we can completely move that level, the black level. But here for the highlights, fortunately we didn't clip, so we have the freedom to make adjustments. And and if we go to this last clip, you can see it's totally blown out. You can see this line, and really literally there's nothing you can do about it. So if I try to pull those highlights down, you see they're locked. And watch, if I pull it all the way down, look, it almost looks like a mat. So whatever we were doing here, probably what happened was when I was looking through the camera that it was probably showing zebra up here, but I didn't realize that it had gone over 109%. So it was showing 100%, but it was actually over. It was like 109%. So what I should have done is probably set the zebras at 95, and then at the first sign of the stripe, stop right there, stop exposing right there, and know that I would keep below my 109%. So the bottom line is this: Cine 1 gives you a good 12 stops of dynamic range. It's a fine cinematic looking gamma curve. There's nothing wrong with using it. It allows you to keep your ISO at 100, which is where it should be. And this is a gradable image. So what I'll do is I'll render out this clip to show you what it looks like when I apply the S curve to it, and you can see that it holds up to grading, and or at least some modest correction. So it gives you a good dynamic range that is still gradable, but the warning is make sure you do not clip your highlights and make sure you do not go over 109%. And probably the safest way to do that is to set your zebras at 95%, and at the first sign of the stripes in the highlights, stop exposing right there. And that should give you enough leeway to know that you're beneath 109%. Like it shows right here, there's you can't correct it. So there's nothing you can do once they clip. They're basically locked in the highlight heaven. Anyway, so I hope this is helpful, and thanks so much for watching.